In this video, we're going to import a project file, a zip file, into Eclipse. This is a Java project that we've worked on before previously in the course. We're then going to create a local repository based on that project. And then finally, we're going to commit that repository to GitHub. All right, so let's get started. So I'm going to start up Eclipse first. And that's going to be the default workspace we're going to continue to use. So that's where all my files, including the Git repositories, are ultimately going to be stored. So I'm going to click on OK to that. All right, so I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger, and then we'll size it up a bit so we can see it pretty comfortably. Okay, that's probably good enough. All right, and in terms of configuration with this option here, the Git repositories window, and this these tabs down here for Git staging, and there'll be another one that I'll be showing you a bit later, they were configured in the previous video. So if you're having problems or your interface doesn't look the same or you're missing some things, check out that video because I went through and showed you how to set those up. All right, so we need a zip file which contains a simple Eclipse project containing some Java code. Now I've actually already downloaded this. It's sortedcollections.zip is the name of the file. You can grab that from the resources section. And what it is, it's just, as I said, a simple Java project. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to delete this test project because we no longer need it. So I'm just going to get rid of it. So right click on delete. I'm going to delete all the files because it was just purely just to confirm everything was working. Delete that, that's gone. All right, so how do we import this Eclipse project? Come up to File, click on Import, then come over here and select General, then you click on Existing Project into Workspace, click on Next. Now we want to click on Select Archive File, then we need to choose the file that we downloaded from the resources section of this video, which is sortedcollections.zip, and I've got that on my desktop as you can see there. Sorted Collection, I think I call it Said Collections, but it's Sorted Collection. And you can see that's the project now. So Eclipse has had a look inside there and realized that that's a project. I can just click on Finish and that project gets added over here. And we can expand it out and have a bit of a look. And we can see if I just expand it out, and we've seen these files before when we're in the command line section of the course. All right, so we've now got that Java project imported into Eclipse. Now at this stage it's not part of a Git repository in any way, which would be correct because we haven't added one or created one on this or in this particular folder yet. So step number one is to create that Git repository. So how do we actually create a Git repository for this project? We come up here and click on the project name at the top there, right click on Team, and click on Share Project. That brings up this dialog box, and you've got a couple of options here. You can either come down here and create a new repository and move it to another location, and that may be consistent if you've got all your Git projects that are in Git version controlled in a particular folder, and you've got your other source code elsewhere. But I think it's a lot easier just to use or create repository in the parent folder. That way you've got your Git repository and the code in the one place. So I'm going to click on Use or Create Repository in Parent Folder, which will be the exact same folder that this code was imported into earlier in the video. I'm going to click on this little checkbox. We'll actually select it once by clicking there. This brings it down here, which is the location for our project. I'm going to click on Create Repository to create a Git repository based on that code. And you can see down the bottom left-hand corner, the Git repositories screen or pane has changed, and we've now got some information. So clearly we can see now that we've got a Git repository that has been created for this project. And if we expand out branches and expand out local, we haven't really got anything in there at this stage though. All right, so I'm just going to move this up a little bit and make it a bit bigger so we can see. Make it a bit wider as well. So what we need to do is, we've created a repository, and just like any other time we work with repositories, we also have to, after creating the repository, specify which files we want to add. Now we've got this Package Explorer view, which is one way of looking at things, but I find that it isn't the best because it doesn't show some of the files that, or folders I should say, that we don't want included in our Git repository. So I suggest you come over here to Window, click on Show View, and select Navigator. And if for some reason Navigator wasn't there, you can go to Window, Show View, Other, And you can just do a search for NAV, for Navigator, and you can select it in there and click OK to find it. As you saw, it was in the previous section. Alright, so now I can expand this out a bit now, and we get a better option here because we get a list of our folders that we do want included, but we also get a list of the things that we don't as well. You see we've got the source folder, we've got these question marks, which is consistent with the fact that we haven't added these files to a Git repository yet, but we've also got this Git bin folder. Now for some reason when this project gets imported and a repository is created, the .gitignore file is added into the bin folder. We don't actually want that, so I'm going to take this opportunity to delete that because we'll be adding a git ignore later in the video. In fact, we'll do that now. So I'm going to click on the bin folder. Now, if you don't know, the bin folder is the folder that Eclipse uses to compile Java applications. So we don't ever want to put those sort of temporary files into a Git repository. So I can just right-click the bin folder, click on Team, and click on Ignore. So two things happened there. Firstly, we got the folder has now been changed. We've no longer got a question mark there. But also here, if we have a look in the gitignore file, which was created, there's now a /bin, which indicates that that bin is now excluded from being used in Git, which is exactly what we want. All right, so we now need to decide what else we do want to include. So I'm going to suggest we include the source folder, entire source folder, so any other subsequent files we put in there will be part of that. Right click, click on Team, click on Add to Index, and you can see that they've been added. And I suggest we also do the settings, the class path, and the gitignore, but that we actually leave out the project. So I'll select those again. Right click, Team, Add to Index. Now, the project file is the Eclipse project file, and normally you wouldn't include project files in a Git repository. I mean, even in the case of settings over here, if I double click that, this has really got to do with Eclipse settings as well, so maybe I'll remove that as well. So I'm going to click on Team, and click on Ignore to that as well, so that isn't included either. All right, so now, down the bottom here, I've got the Git staging window open. So if yours isn't open, make sure you click on that. And this is giving us a bit of an update as to what's going to happen when we do a commit. So I've got the various files that I've selected, the class path, the .gitignore file, and our source code, and also the settings file, even though I backed that out. So what we can do here is we can actually come back down to here. We can right click that. We can remove from index. And you can see now that it's not actually showing anything in there. So we're not going to include that either. And this is personal preference, and I don't want to go too much into the specifics of an Eclipse project. It's more showing you which files you can, which files are going to be included, and how you would go about not including certain folders or certain files. The bottom line though is this Git staging screen shows us the staged files, the files that are going to be added when we do a commit, and also the unstaged files, the ones that won't be added. So we're at the stage now where we can actually commit this. So let's put in a message, or put in a message in the commit to message section. So I'll put initial import of Java project. Now I know you can't see the author email address there, but the author and committer are added automatically, and Eclipse has read that from our global configuration that we did, it seems like 100 videos ago earlier in the course. So let's grab that from the file that we created in the command line section of the course. So at this stage now, we're actually ready to do an import. We're ready to actually commit the changes to the repository. So I could just click on commit over there, but just to show you how you would normally do it, I normally like clicking on the project up here, and there's an option here, commit changes. I can click that there as well, which will actually open up the Git staging window anyway. And we've got two options, commit and push, which we can't really do a commit and push at the moment for the reason that we haven't created a remote repository on GitHub yet. So let's just do a commit to add that to the local repository, the local Git repository. And you can see that that's now finished, and you may have caught the little fact in here that with the branches option open, when I come down here to local, I've now got a repository here. So I can click on that, and then I can right click it and click on show in history. And then it opens up another tab, and that gives us the history of what's happened with that particular import. I can click on that, and that gives us the commit ID, and also gives us the list of files over here to the right that were included in that particular commit. So that's a very useful window to have open. All right, so at this stage, we've now imported our project into Eclipse. We've now selected the files and folders that we wanted to include, as well as the folder and a couple of files that we didn't want to include into the repository, and we've committed those changes into our local repository. The next step is now to set up a remote repository and then to push the changes to that. So in terms of setting it up, we come over here to Remotes in the Git Repositories window. We right click on Create Remote, and it's asking us the name. And you recall that we've used Origin as the default, which is the default for the remote name. We're going to leave that and click on OK, making sure that Configure Push is selected. We then get this screen, and what we now need to do is swing over to the browser and go ahead and create a repository on GitHub. So let's go and do that. So we're going to do a github.com, and we're going to create a new repository. And I'm just going to call this one Sorted Collection. And I'm going to leave everything as the default. Our description, we'll just put sample Java project. Click on Create Repository. All right, now the next thing we need to do is take a copy of this. We can come over here and just click on that, copy to clipboard. So we need to paste that into Eclipse. All right, we'll go back to Eclipse. And what we now need to do is click on Change. Now notice what happened when I did that. It automatically read from the copy buffer and figured out the URI that we got from GitHub. And it's automatically included some other information as well, this github.com and the repository path. So it's gleaned all that information from that URL, which is pretty cool. But the other thing we need to do is put in the username and password for GitHub. So I'm going to enter my credentials. Now you've got an option here to store in Secure Store. So that's storing the password, username and password for GitHub on the local machine, so it doesn't keep asking you for that every time. So I'm going to click on Store in Secure Store, click on Finish, and it comes up here and says the master password was created in Eclipse Secure Storage. If you ever need to recover your password, you need a password hint. Do you want to provide a hint? I'm going to click on No. That's a once-only thing to do with recovering the password within Eclipse, nothing to do with Git. All right, so we're halfway there, but what we now need to do is do a bit more configuring. Now we could come in here in terms of the reference mappings, or what is going to be included in the remote repository by clicking on Add, and we could start figuring it out in there. But there's actually an easy way of doing it. It's to cancel out of that, click on Advanced, and over here on the source reference, we've got this little drop down, so we can click on that. We can choose Master, Master being the branch that we want to include or send up, push to the remote repository. If I do that and click on Add Spec, that sets up the remote there. You can see there now, it's basically setting up the relationship, the mode, so that the Eclipse knows how to go about updating, and also which, in this case, the master, which reference it's going to be using. And I'm going to click on Save Specifications in Origin Configuration as well, and click on Finish. We then get this screen, and what we can now do is if we want to, we can save this, or we could save it and push, because this is still in the configuration screen. But I'm going to save it first. And you may have noticed this expanded now, and we can expand it out, and we've now got a remote here, which I can just expand out a bit more. And we've now got the ability to push, and we're going to do that now. We're going to click on Push here. I'm going to select that. I'm going to right click, select Push, and that's now pushing the changes to GitHub. And it gives us a bit of a confirmation here. The master is going to the master branch on GitHub, and that's the URL that was used, which was the URL that we pasted in. I'm going to click on OK there. And let's go back to GitHub, do a refresh, a reload, and there's our project. We've got a .git ignores in there. That's the one that we decided to exclude the bin folders, or bin folder. And we can see that the bin folder wasn't included, which is correct. Source com Timbachaka is the source code. That's the various files there. So that's clearly working as well. At the moment, we've got one branch and one commit. All right, so let's just, to make sure things are working, we'll go back to Eclipse. And let's just make a change to one of these files and just commit it, just to make sure that the commit's working. So I'm going to go to main.java to open that up. And let's just make a change somewhere here. I'm just going to put test comment. I'm going to save the change. It's Control S on Windows, it would have been Command S on a Mac. So we've now made a change. Now notice when I did that, we've got this little greater than sign there. So that indicates that file has got a change. So there's been a change made to that file. So in terms of saving the changes, we could just either right-click this individual file, click on Team, Commit. All we need to do is just choose which files that we want included here. Now project, we need to decide what to do with it. I didn't obviously make a decision on that, so let's make a decision on that as well. We're going to ignore that as well. So Team, Ignore, so that it's not coming up and asking us each time, because we really only want here the list of what the current actions that need to be taken. We don't want to be continually having to select the same thing each time. So in this case, both these files, I'm going to select both of them, should be added. So I'm going to add to index. Let's put it now and put it into the stage section. Noting that it's changed here now. We've got the asterisk there and the asterisk there indicating that it has been changed but not yet committed. And I can put in test comment and updated .gitignore file. And again, you can't see the email address. So I can commit here. And commit would just commit those changes to the local repository. If I do a commit and push, that'll do both the commit to the local repository and also to the remote repository, which is GitHub. So I'm going to do commit and push to do both at the same time. Give it a moment to complete. And we've got an update here. You can see that the test comment and updated .gitignore file. Click on OK. And incidentally, we can come back here at any time, the branches, and have a look in history. We've now got two commits there. We've got the second commit that we've just added. Again, the author and committer, the parent, initial import, which was the original import, and then which branch it's come from, and the comment that was appropriate for this particular commit, then the files from that particular commit that were actually added. All right, so that's our first attempt. We've now got a project, and let's just confirm that those changes were made on GitHub. So I'm going to right-click and reload. We've now got two commits. Let's go into the commits. This is our second test commit. Let's click on that. And we can see that the new .gitignore file is there. It's now got the settings project as well. And to change the test comment to main.java is there as well. All right, so that's it. So we've now got our project successfully imported into Eclipse. We've also created a repository. We've added the the relevant project files and folders to that local repository. We then set up a remote repository on GitHub, and we then pushed the local repository to the remote repository. And then, of course, we made a modification to a few files and tested a sample commit to both the local and the remote repository, and everything's working fine. So I'm going to finish this video here now. In the next one, let's actually look at a little bit more about pushing our changes from Eclipse up to GitHub. So we'll just make a few other little changes to make sure that that process is working. So let's work on that in the next video.